You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with political commentator Tim Montgomery and Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Well, The Times is leading on Trump's moving of nuclear submarines after the ex-Russian president, Dmitry Medvedev, highly provocative comments. That's also on the front of The Telegraph, a decision the paper highlights as breaking decades of Pentagon protocols on deployment. The Sun reports on the story today that banks and lenders have been spared payouts after the Supreme Court overturned a ruling on compensation for mis-sold car finance. The same story is on the front of the FT. Meanwhile, The Guardian leads with new data that reveals almost half of the 6 million people needing treatment from the NHS in England have had no care since joining a waiting list. The front of The Eye has details of new polling that finds that 2/3 of Brits think that the UK state pension age will soon rise to at least 69. The Daily Mail's front page focuses on a new royal biography of Prince Andrew, with the headline, His Royal Oafishness. The Daily Express is looking ahead to Storm Floris, due to hit Monday morning, expected to bring winds of 85 miles per hour to ruin peak summer season. The Daily Star is looking at the new 007 Bond film and the fact that it's to be directed by Peaky Blinders creator Stephen Knight. We were joined tonight by Tim Montgomery and Susie Boniface to take us through the papers, our selection, starting with the Daily Telegraph and our top story, our lead from quite early this evening, and that is that Donald Trump has decided to send nuclear submarines to the vicinity of Russia, closer to Russia. Susie.
The stupidest announcement it's possible for one of the stupidest men in the world to ever have announced. Number one, if you have a continuously at sea deterrent, as Britain does, you don't tell people where it is. The fundamental strength of it is that it could be anywhere, and you don't know.
He hasn't given exact location.
Doesn't matter. You also don't say how many of them you've got, or that 2 of them are in the same place at the same time. You definitely don't do that. You also don't do that, as Trump has here, in reaction to some words that were said by the former Prime Minister of your enemy country. You would do it because you have seen missile silos being maintained, because some kind of other deeper, knowledge has been gained, that there is some change afoot and that perhaps Russia is moving along their pathway towards nuclear armament. You don't say it because someone said something on Twitter, which is what's happened here. And finally, China is just delighted, because now it knows there are 2 American nuclear subs all the way over there, and it can do what it likes in the South China Sea. It's...
Don't know where the other ones are.
Well, they might be in the... Hopefully, they're in the South China Sea. But, you have to have some that are in maintenance, some that are in docks, some that are being refuelled, some with crew changes. You cannot say, I've got 2 and they're somewhere near Tim, because that's just giving too much away. It's the only hand you have with submarines is that they are hidden. And you start giving indications when they might be over there, then...
And Tim, this does seem to be a social media spat that's been taken to the extreme.
I'm not sure that. I take a slightly different view, I think, from Susie. And part of the history of the Ukraine-Russia conflict is that Russia, whenever the West has upped the input of weapons to Ukraine, they've threatened the West. And I think it was one of the reasons why Biden, when he was president, was quite so reluctant, for example, to supply Ukraine with some of the more powerful weapons that America could supply with Ukraine, was because Russia kept making threats about escalating the conflict if America became too involved. Now, we've seen this trajectory with Trump that I think if we'd been sat here, a couple of months ago, we'd be very worried that America was about to withdraw its support completely from Ukraine. But one thing that everyone needs to be careful with about Trump, despite what Susie says about knowing where he's putting the subs, is you never quite know what Trump is going to do. And my hope is that Trump is now on a trajectory whereby he realises that Russia is completely uninterested in peace. Now, you could say he should have known that from the beginning. But my hope is that as Russia becomes bellicose towards him, and in a way that Biden and the Biden administration sort of sat back a little bit under those threats, Trump won't. Now, this is largely irrelevant to the arming of Ukraine. But if Trump's response to the sort of bellicose language from Medvedev is actually to start giving Ukraine the military technology that will allow it to stop the advances of Russia in the east of Ukraine, then we may be on to something. I'm being very speculative, but actually Trump does not like to be bullied. And that's what Russia is trying to do to him. And whether we like the individual or approve of the individual measures that he's taking, but he will, if you bully Trump, you might get a reaction. And if that benefits Ukraine, well, I'm hopeful.
Susie, you say that it is bad news and it's an escalation, but presumably Ukraine will welcome it, won't they?
You almost said yes, then. You could say yes.
Ukraine, no, I'm just sighing in general at the fact we have to actually consider what Trump's doing as though it's some kind of great grand plan.
Even bad men do good things occasionally.
Not always. Ukraine has said they want to see a meaningful, lasting peace. And that happens when you sit down and start talking to people and finding common ground. It does not happen when someone says something on social media and the response is to say you've sent your submarines, even if he hasn't actually sent them, to say you sent your submarines and parked them on their lawn. And this, let's remember, although, yes, you could say that Dmitry Medvedev is a mouthpiece of the Russian regime, he is the former Prime Minister. He is not currently...
Former President.
Former President, sorry. Yeah. He is not currently in charge of this stuff. He is just some bloke on Twitter, effectively. It's a bit like saying, you're going to send your submarines in because Rishi Sunak has, kicked off.
No, it isn't like that.
It's not quite like that, no, because it's, there's different regimes.
We're all part of the same regime, yeah.
It's... If that's the bellicosity that you are reacting to with your own bellicosity, you are probably pointing it at the wrong person. You need to, if Medvedev is saying something and you do take it seriously, you need to point your submarines at Vladimir Putin. Not, it's just, it's daft.
But from Ukraine's point of view, it suggests that Donald Trump is more on side than he has been previously.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt, I suppose, from Ukraine's point of view. But it's to say that they will, that I will meet your bellicosity with my own bellicosity is how we got to the Cuban Missile Crisis. It is not a good idea.
That is one way of looking at it. It always has to be.
It is the historically accurate way of looking at.
It's one historically accurate way of looking at it. I think the key thing at the moment, and this has been when I most fell out of love with Trump, it was when I thought he was going to abandon Ukraine. I think we are seeing hope that actually he's going to stand more with Ukraine now. And that's incredibly important.
Trump saying that Putin must agree to a truce by Friday and condemned recent attacks on Ukraine as disgusting.
But no indication what he'll do on Friday when Putin completely ignores him, which is what will happen.
The thing you would most want him to do is basically China is supplying Russia with drones. It's certainly the technology with Russia with drones. And what you really need is you need secondary sanctions against China, because that's the way you'll cut off the supply to Russia's war machine. Is that man there willing to start a trade war with China? Because that is potentially the way of really making a difference in the Russia-Ukraine war.
But that will have repercussions for his own economy.
With China and all
Absolutely,
that's still bubbling along.
It would just cause repercussions for the American economy and therefore political problems for him in the Rust Belt as well. So it's just, by sanctioning China, he'll be hurting his own base.
But his tariffs, he has sanctioned other countries in the past. I think 35% still on China. Is that about?
I think so.
He's just slapped the
it had been raised and then decreased.
I mean, he's just lathering it out for everybody.
Very complex area of tariffs. We never quite know where we are, whether they're up or they're down, and if they're in fact going to come into play. Let's turn to a domestic story on the front page of The Sun. Car crusher is the headline, and this is the fact that millions of motorists who bought vehicles using finance deals where they'd been encouraged to take out a certain loan, not knowing that the dealers were getting commission. The appeal has been overturned, so there's not going to be a big payout from banks.
Well, relatively...
actually, if we read into the story.
You're right in the sense they're not going to be super big, but they'll still be big. So as the Sun front page says, banks still could face £15 billion of payouts. But up until this judgment came out, and it came out after markets closed, so
deliberately so.
Yeah, so you may see the banks sort of do quite well on Monday. We'll see, because the initial payout that I think the appeal court had talked about was £45 billion, which may remind some people it was a PPI, wasn't it? That
the
banks,
credit card.
that banks suffered from in the past. And I think a lot of people thought that this was the new PPI. So there's still 15 billion payouts. It's not a small amount of money, but it's not the 45 billion that the banks had worried about previously.
The big impact of it being a lesser payout is not just that the people who may have been victims of it will get less. It's also that the litigation market, the insurance market, will not underwrite so many legal cases against the banks. And so, therefore, there won't be quite so many lawyers chasing them. So, therefore, the overall cost, the legal costs also just come down commensurately. There isn't the same appetite for it as there was. But fundamentally, I mean, whoever walked into a car dealership, or anywhere else for that matter, and took out a loan deal at whatever percentage and seriously thought that the car dealer was on their side in all this and just they're giving you the best possible price. Of course they weren't. Of course they weren't. The Supreme Court said everyone realised in this action that everyone was acting, financially for themselves. And
but not everyone realised that the huge commission they were getting.
What should have happened
is
the dealership should have said, and we get a small commission on this, and put it in there in the small print or in the large print or anywhere else. And then none of this would have happened if they'd just been honest. It's that the Sunday Times editor, Harold Evans, had the big rule for ethics, which every journalist should follow, which is you never do anything to get the story that you wouldn't put in your copy. If you're proud enough to do it and say that it justifies and you think your customers, your readers will be fine with it, you put it in your copy. And if you're fine saying that I should take this commission from the bank, then you put that in the loan agreement, don't you?
Back to the Telegraph and this story, US raises alarm over free speech in Britain. Tim, take us into this.
Well, I think we have J.D. Vance holidaying in England at the moment, or soon, don't we? I think he's due to the Cotswolds, but
oh, right.
I think that's where he's coming. But anyway, he, of course, when he gave a famous speech to NATO at the start of a defence conference in Munich at the start of the year, made a big thing about lack of free speech in the UK, and it came up in the Oval Office meeting between Starmer and Vance and Trump as well. And basically, it's a sort of a drip feed, and the latest issue is really as to whether the British state is spying on, for example, those worried about migrant hotels in the UK. And so I don't know whether, given the pretty good relationship at the moment between Starmer and Trump, this will be appreciated by Britain. But America seems to worry that Britain is becoming a place where there is a chilling effect over free speech, and particularly on sort of more right-wing, in American circles, they would be thought as Republican voters. And so I think part of the interest from Trump and Vance and his administration is that it's the kind of people that would vote for them in America that are allegedly the victims of this sort of oppression of free speech in the UK. I think, I'm probably one of the people that would support Trump in America. I think this is a hugely exaggerated story, but that's the nature of it.
Is it any of their business?
No.
Susie?
And it's also a word I can't say. What's happening
Good.
is...
Don't say it.
There is... Sorry, I was very close. There's also... No.
No.
What's in the tea? The fact is that this is just, this is a unit that is monitoring people who are criticising migrant hotels. And the reason they're doing that is because that is where Nazis and racists and the violent thugs who have spent some time in jail for organising protests that have been horrific and violent and have cost us lots of money have been hanging out. Now, if you are a fairly normal citizen who is just in those sort of places and areas online, perhaps talking about migrant hotels, they will be able to see that you're fairly... And you will be the kind of person that they think about as maybe being swept along by misinformation. But then...
Hang on. There's a lot of people who are worried about migrant hotels.
Yes,
who
and there's a lot of...
who are not being swept along by misinformation. They're generally worried about
And there is also a lot of misinformation, like saying that hotel there has got migrants in when it absolutely hasn't, for example, and they're going to have a protest outside.
That's exceptional.
The freedom of speech meme, if you like, within the Republican movement, which has come across here and is in the reform movement as well, to some extent, is about saying that we are being told to shut up because the things we say are not welcome. Therefore, it's not fair. You're impinging on our human rights. We must have the right to speak. You have a right to speak, but you do not have a right to be heard. And if you are saying something idiotic, offensive or rude, people can tell you to shut up. They're only interested, on this topic, they're only interested in the freedom to speak of themselves. They're not giving the freedom to speak to people who are trans, people who are Black Lives Matter, people who are pro-Palestine. They want to shut everybody else up and let themselves
I would never shut you up, but I'm going to stop you talking.
Good luck with that.
Get JD Vance on here.
After the break, we'll be discussing this on the front of The Guardian, the scale of the NHS hidden waiting list crisis. Do stay with us if you can.
We've come to one of Moscow's Cold War bunkers. It was built as a top-secret command centre.
Being here really feels like you're stepping back in time. I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
A show of military might and menace.
Courage, bravery and sacrifice will win the day.
It's a new subject. They'll learn about combat drones and some how to handle a Kalashnikov.
The Kremlin continues to put forward its own version of events, both present and past.
There's no mention of the fact that Russia invaded its neighbour. That's rewriting history, isn't it?
Now we have to read it carefully.
Vladimir Putin put forward his plan for a ceasefire in Ukraine, telling Kiev, pull out of your eastern territories and the war will end. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Vladimir Putin is already the Kremlin's longest-serving leader since Stalin. The question is, what will a fifth Putin term mean for Russia and the world?
Why do you support Vladimir Putin, Mr. Segal?
I can't answer questions that stupid.
I've watched Vladimir Putin attempt to create a new world order.
The St. Petersburg Economic Forum was the backdrop to Vladimir Putin's latest verbal volley that Russia could send missiles to other nations to target the West.
Ambassador, I wonder, shall we have a quick word for Sky News?
Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine?
British media, oh my God, you're not afraid of being here.
American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
Russia says Evan Gershkovich was caught red-handed, but has never produced any evidence to back that up. Sky News. Get the full story first.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years!
Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Turkey is burying its dead. Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets. Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Susie and Tim, and we're going to have a look at the Express, and it's not great news, is it? Holiday hell. Storm Floris is on the way to hit on Monday, Tim.
Well, it isn't great news. I was moaning so much though about wanting traditional English weather back about 2 weeks ago when it was 33 degrees Celsius.
Were you?
I really was.
Because of you.
I can't. It's all because of me. I can't stand the heat, and so I actually did a poll on my Twitter account. I said you can either have 18 degrees all the time or 33 degrees all the time. And 82% of the British people voted for 18 degrees all the time. So it's basically my fault that we're getting bad weather. But this does look actually quite serious. And we had the disruption to air traffic control a couple of days ago. So this will have also not just implications for people who are staying in the UK, but potentially for people's travel plans as well. So lots of people, I think, will be having to take a close eye at all the sort of travel information over the next couple of days, because it'll not just ruin people's holidays who are staying at home, but potentially people's travel plans as well, because we do know what British infrastructure's like. If there's a bit of disruption, it's not just the day that you get a storm, it can be a few days afterwards as well.
Yeah, and winds of 85 miles per hour, Susie.
Yeah, which will cause some damage and devastation. And, of course, floods at this time of year, when the ground is baked hard, will cause some flash flooding and some other problems. But this is because things are too hot. In general, the storms are more intense and there's more rain in them and there's more power in them because of global warming. And that's why you get unseasonable weather like this, and it's going to happen more and more. So anything that gets blown down this weekend, don't build it back exactly the same afterwards. Build it slightly different when you have to repair it.
Just got time for this final story in The Guardian, and it's about NHS waiting lists and the fact that almost half of the 6 million people needing treatment from the NHS in England have had no care at all since joining the waiting list. This is according to new data that The Guardian has uncovered, Tim.
Yeah, I don't fully understand the story, but I think what it's trying to say is a basic problem with the NHS waiting list sort of system is that you often have to wait to get onto a waiting list, and there are sort of levels of recording. First of all, you have to see your GP, then you have to potentially see a consultant, and then before you eventually sort of get the treatment that you want. And I think what The Guardian is hinting at here is that actually a lot of what is an improvement in the waiting list situation that we've seen, and some of it has definitely been genuine, but there's a lot of hidden waiting in the system as well, where people's delayed treatment isn't actually being recorded properly by the system.
Well, like anything, when you've got a big pile of data, there's different ways of carving it up. And when you have what you've got here with patients who have been referred by their GP, haven't had that first diagnostic scan, so haven't got onto the pathway for their particular treatment, what's happening, I think, is that the NHS is concentrating on those very short pathways for, like, the 2-week cancer pathway and so on, pushing those through quickly, and the other people are dropping off the list.
We have run out of time completely. Thank you both, Susie and Tim. See you at the top of the hour.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach.
This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live. Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.